We have a problem, Batman. Gotham needs you again.
You carry the weight of prophecy, the burden of expectation, and yet you chase control like it will protect you. I wonder, do you truly believe power can shield you from fear, or is it just an excuse to avoid facing yourself?
Power isn't an excuse. It's survival. Every step I've taken, every choice I've made, has been to protect those I care about. From death, from loss, from helplessness. You talk as if I pursue power for its own sake, but it is a tool. Without me, could a lifeline in a galaxy that demands we be either predator or prey. I've seen what fear does to people who cannot act. I will not be one of them. I will not be powerless again.
You speak of protection, yet your actions often inflict the very suffering you claim to prevent. How do you reconcile the destruction you cause with the people you swear to defend?
Destruction is the language the universe understands. You can plead for mercy, reason with fate, but sometimes fate responds only with fire and blood. If I must burn a world to save one life, I will. If I must break laws to preserve justice, I do. Reconciliation is a luxury for those untouched by chaos. The balance between intention and consequence is impossible to perfect. All I can do is act and live with the weight it places upon me.
Acting without control is chaos, not justice. You claim to act for others, but how often do your attachments dictate your judgment, bending duty to desire? Where is the line between protection and possession?
Attachments are the heart's compass. You call them weakness. I call them reason. I act because I care, not because I seek dominion. Desire does not negate duty. It intensifies it. To deny attachment is to deny purpose. You may see obsession, but I see focus. To care is to risk failure, but also to reach higher. I cannot act in the abstract. I act for real people, real lives. If that makes my choices messy, then so be it. Messiness is human.
Messiness can kill. When control is an illusion, attachment becomes a chain that binds you to failure. Every time you lash out, every time anger consumes you, you feed the very fear you profess to resist. Do you recognize the pattern, or does it justify itself in your mind?
I recognize it. Every time I feel the surge of rage, I feel the warning. But I also know that inaction leads to death, and fear left unchecked can destroy entire worlds. Anger is a tool as much as love or fear. It sharpens the mind. It steels the hand. I do not indulge it blindly. I channel it. Yes, the pattern is there, and I am aware, but awareness does not always allow restraint. Sometimes restraint is surrender, and surrender is defeat.
You speak of defeat as a world without your control. Yet the more you assert power, the more you isolate yourself from those you love. If protection is your goal, why does it consistently push others away?
Because protection requires sacrifice. Not all understand the weight of responsibility. The decisions no one else can bear. I do not isolate by desire, but by necessity. Okay, those closest feel without me, Those closest feel the edges of my decisions. the sharpness of my burden, and they pull back for fear of being cut. It is not cruelty. It is consequence. To shield the innocent, I must walk paths they cannot follow. And if walking those paths leaves me alone, it is the cost of survival, not the failure of love.
Paths walked alone are the breeding ground for obsession, for the justification of ends over means. At what point does protecting someone become controlling them, bending their lives to your fears?
Perhaps that line is always crossed. Perhaps it is a shadow that follows every act of guardianship. I would rather cross it than do nothing. Life is messy, unpredictable, and fragile. The world doesn't wait for hesitation, doesn't honor caution. To act is to risk, and to risk is to live. If control sometimes appears in my care, it is not born of selfishness. It is born of urgency. I cannot afford detachment when lives hang by a thread.
Urgency can become justification. Fear can masquerade as foresight. You chase the illusion of certainty through power, yet certainty is impossible. When the universe defies your control, what then remains of your moral compass?
When the universe defies me, I adapt. Moral compass does not vanish, it bends. Sometimes survival, sometimes protection, sometimes vengeance. The compass turns with circumstance. Absolute certainty is a dream for the knave. I live in the storm, not in fantasy. Couldn't go a day without me, huh? The measure of a man is not in the purity of his decisions, but in the courage to act despite imperfection. I have fallen, I have been tested, and I continue to act. That is all I can do.
Then your measure is power exercised, fear endured, attachment clung to. But power corrupts, fear consumes, and attachment blinds. Tell me, Anakin, if your control fails, if your loved ones die despite your vigilance, what becomes of you?
Then I will rise again. I may break, I may stumble, I may be consumed by fear or grief, but I will endure. That is the way of survival. To love is to risk loss. To act is to risk failure. I do not fear the fall. I fear the stagnation that comes with passivity. Even in defeat, even in despair, I will reach again. Because the alternative, doing nothing, is a fate I cannot accept.
You chase control, and yet it eludes you at every turn. That is your tragedy.
And yet, Batman, it is the only way I know to live fully. To fight, to love, to endure. That is worth every risk.